Caroline Leavitt has never been in the news before. She stood in front of the cameras with her eyes full of tears and her voice shaking. No one saw it coming. This time something was different. We'd grown used to seeing her as strong and vocal, but all of a sudden she was weak and emotional as she told us something shocking about her husband. Was it a breakup, a choice that changed your life, or something even stranger? The room went silent as she spoke. The truth is finally being told. The way Caroline Leavitt got to the national stage wasn't exactly the norm. She didn't come from a powerful family or have a clear road set out for her. The girl was from a small town in New Hampshire. Her family ran an ice cream shop and a used truck lot. But Caroline was different even back then. She was driven, ambitious, and didn't mind using her voice. When I got to college, that fire got even stronger. It was exams time for most students, but Caroline was making news by writing strong op-eds supporting Trump's policies and even starting the first radio club at her school. There was more to her than just having an opinion. She made sure that people heard it. They were heard too. A lot of people paid attention to her, which led her straight into right politics. She got a job at the White House after an internship at Fox News. She worked directly for Kayleigh McEnany, that place. As Rep. Elise Stefanik's communications chief, she went on to become a major force in political messaging. It can be hard for young people to be heard in this world, but Caroline not only did that, she made sure no one could ignore her. We're seeing a different side of her today though. Caroline is strong and sure of herself as she steps in front of the cameras to make a big news about her husband. She is crying. And believe me, nobody saw this coming. Caroline's work had its ups and downs, like an event she went through after being voted. There was a lot of activity in the press room, and you could almost hear the doubt that was there. It wasn't exactly a dream job for the audience to hear the youngest White House press secretary in history. Some people thought she'd play it safe, follow the script, and maybe mess up. Others thought she would be scared and stressed out about it, but then she spoke up, and it was clear right away that she wasn't going to follow the established rules. Her first meeting lasted 47 minutes, which is a long time for the first day, but it wasn't just the length that made people talk. It was also how she dealt with it. There was no dodging of tough questions or carefully written answers that weren't answers at all. Instead, she faced the press head-on, arguing against their stories, pointing out their bias, and making it clear that she wasn't just another spokesperson, she was in charge. Even Peter Alexander of NBC asked her tough questions, maybe thinking she would mess up, but she didn't. She stood her ground, answered with confidence, and she never looked like she was scared. The doubters went in expecting to see lack of knowledge. Instead, they saw someone who knew what she was doing very well. This moment didn't just happen. She was getting ready for it for a long time before she ever stood on that stage. Back in New Hampshire at St. Anselm College, she was already learning about the game and how politics and the media work together. She got a job as an assistant press secretary in the Trump White House because of what she knew. Later, she became the national press secretary for Trump's 2024 campaign. Her job wasn't just to go along for the ride. She had to learn, adjust, and prove herself in one of the most difficult political settings. But it wasn't just her confidence that made her stand out, it was also her plan. She saw changes in the television world. Traditional news sources were losing ground to podcasters, social media stars, independent voices, and non-traditional writers. These groups were reaching more people than ever before. She didn't fight the change, instead she leaned into it. She didn't waste time trying to get the old media to agree with her. She took the government's word straight to the places where people were already listening. There wasn't just a new person at the stage. The White House changed the way it talked to the public in every way. From the start, she made it clear that she was changing a job. For years, the White House press briefings were mostly made up of writers from the same old media groups who asked the same questions. Everything changed when Leavitt took over. Conservative podcast hosts, influential people, and independent media views all of a sudden had a seat at the table. The powerful people in politics were shocked by the move. Her mind told her it was clear. Millions of Americans stopped watching standard news, so why should the White House not pay attention to them? Her method worked, even if some people didn't like it. Stephen Chung, who is in charge of communications at the White House, said that her first news appearance was the best one ever. DC went crazy after hearing that one thing. The old approach in which the major media told the story was no longer valid. Of course, not everyone liked it. Even before she was chosen, Leavitt caused a lot of debate. But it wasn't just about her politics. Her personal life also made the news. Nicholas Rio, a 59-year-old real estate mogul, had been married to her for 32 years. People had thoughts. Was it love? Was there a plan? Different people didn't think it was a big deal or scandalous. The noise didn't bother her either way. She needed to focus on more important things. The world then turned upside down. July 13, 2024. In Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump held a meeting. It felt like electricity. Then there were bangs. There was chaos. Trump was hit by a bullet. A lot of Secret Service agents showed up. People who agreed screamed. Even though he was bleeding, he stood up. Not only did it shake the country, but it also changed Leavitt's whole life. There was something else about it that hit me. That day she wasn't in the crowd. In fact, she wasn't even in Washington. At home she was rocking her 3-day-old son to sleep. She treated the gathering like any other political event. Then all of a sudden she was freezing while watching history happen right in front of her. The video played over and over again. It was so heavy that it hit her like a freight train. She was a new mom, holding this tiny, weak life, but she also fought for political rights. She knew deep down that this wasn't just about Trump but also about the future. She chose something that most new moms wouldn't even think about. 4 days later she told her husband, "I'm going back." That was all she gave herself. She was back in the fight 4 days after giving birth. The people were shocked. How did she do it? Why would she? Her body was still getting better, and her baby was only a week old. But for Leavitt the answer was clear. The president almost died while fighting for our country. People thought it was brave or crazy of her to say, "The least I could do was get back to work." But for her, it was just what she had to do. She saw Trump's victory as more than just another crazy political event. It was a statement. It showed that you could stand tall even when everyone else tried to knock you down if you were strong, determined, and just plain stubborn. What was her reason for giving up if he could take a bullet and keep going? But let's be honest, getting back into politics while taking care of a baby wasn't easy. A short time ago she was arguing with reporters at the White House stage. The next moment, she was wondering if her child remembered what she looked like. It breaks her heart to leave her child every day. She said, "It does break your heart." Did she slow down though? Not a chance. It was just not in her to do that. And to be honest, her husband Nicholas Rio was her secret tool. The guy didn't like being the center of attention, but he was the glue that held everything together while she dealt with the chaos. Washington, he was at home taking care of their son and making sure he was fed and fed. Hopefully he wasn't already planned his escape from the crib. His job and business helped him step up in ways that most people never saw. The attempt on her life was a wake-up call for her, but it was also a shock to the country. It helped her remember why she was on this road, why she gave up things most people would take for granted, and why she couldn't just walk away. She wasn't just keeping it together when she talked to the press a few days after one of the scariest events in modern politics. She was stepping it up a notch. There was something more personal going on beneath her cool and controlled exterior that no one saw coming. Not only was she a mother and a politician, she was also about to say something shocking about her husband that would make everyone talk. Politicians look at every relationship like it's a crime scene, and the fact that she married Nicholas Rio made people wonder. However, unlike most of the power couple pairs you see in DC, it wasn't about job moves or making political deals. They met at a political event, one of those stuffy, high-energy get-togethers where everyone smiles, shakes hands, and acts like they're not tired. She was already successful and happy with her life. Rio, on the other hand, was a real estate mogul with a lot of money and had no desire to get involved in politics. He didn't even talk to the press very much, and he didn't care about making news. But when a friend they both had put them in touch, something just clicked. They didn't make sense on paper. She was young, wanted to do well, and loved being in the spotlight. He was 32 years older, didn't like social media, and didn't care about the current upset on Twitter. He didn't have any People today pretty much judge success by how many Instagram fans they have. For someone with his level of impact, not having a Twitter, LinkedIn, or even a Facebook page was unheard of. But where other people saw an imbalance, they saw balance. She took over rooms and made waves, while he was the quiet leader who was great at keeping an eye on things from the sides. Not only was their connection strange, it was the kind that made people talk. Different people loved it or didn't get it, but it worked for them. People talked about it all the time. The difference in ages wasn't just a side note, it turned into a topic of discussion. A lot of strong views were shared on social media, others didn't believe it was real and called it manipulative. The comments part became mean every time she shared a picture with Rio. Is that your dad? One person made fun of. Someone else hit her hard. Your husband could be your grandfather, but you judge everyone else. But she wouldn't have it. There were no long explanations or dramatic retorts. There was only quiet, unwavering faith. She wrote, "He's my biggest fan, the best dad and the best man I've ever met." People who thought they could make her feel bad enough to keep quiet didn't know what they were getting into. The internet watched their every move, but she and Rio were living their lives quietly, on purpose, and without needing anyone to watch. There were no flashy shows or magazine spreads, just two people who knew exactly what they had. That beat showed up in even their engagement. They did not do anything fancy on Christmas Day 2023 in their own home. He asked, she answered, and that was it. She shared a picture of Rio on one knee the next day. The picture looked like a gem reflecting the winter light. "I've never had a better Christmas. The man of my dreams is going to marry me." No show and no fake emotion, just real happiness. Their wedding was the same. Most major people choose fancy ceremonies that make headlines, but theirs was nothing like that at all. Out of the public eye there will be no press, no exclusives, and no leaks from unknown sources. She didn't even post a wedding announcement. All she did was add one word to her bio, wife. It goes without saying that getting married didn't slow them down, it sped things up. Did she take on one of the hardest political jobs? Yes. Did Rio keep running his huge real estate business the same way he always did? Yes. There won't be any interviews, moments meant to get attention, or sudden memoirs called My Life as a Political Spouse. Without being seen, he stayed right where he wanted to be. That didn't mean his presence wasn't felt though. People were shocked when she went back to work only 4 days after giving birth. They had questions. How is that even possible? Easy, Rio. He was at home taking care of their new baby son while she was in front of the press. He was always her biggest fan, the man who did everything for her and didn't ask for anything in return. That being said, no one knew how much he had given up. He wasn't just the loving husband who stood in the background and nodded like a well-dressed extra. It was a much bigger deal. People finally got it when she finally broke down and told them the truth about him. Nicholas Rio had something on him that no one saw coming. He wasn't supposed to be the center of attention, the youngest White House press secretary. She made history. Rio, on the other hand, stayed behind the scenes where he felt most at ease. People thought he was just another successful businessman, but his story was different from what they thought it would be. Rio had nothing at age 18 before it became famous, had millions of fans, and had political power. Most kids were worried about applying to college at the same time that Rio was living on the streets. He didn't have a safety net, a backup plan, or a speech from his folks telling him, "You can always come home." He was by himself. And while most people in that situation would be focused on staying alive, Rio saw a chance. Not failing was not a choice. Even though he didn't have any friends or money, he worked hard and saved every penny he could. By the early 2000s, he had seen rundown homes in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, that most people would not even look at twice. Everyone else thought they were hopeless. They were like gold to Rio. He started out small by buying houses that no one else wanted, making them up and renting them out to people who were looking for great places to live. He put all the money he made back into his business. By 2005, he had actually built 15 buildings with 70 rental units, and a reputation for seeing value where other people didn't.
After that his power grew. Rio Enterprises LLC was his business, and it was all over New England. The same plan worked for him: find lost places, make something useful out of them, and never go too far. People already knew his name, and knew that he was worth a lot of money. This is what no one saw coming, though. His businesses became more than just ways to make money. A place where people can get together, a meeting ground, and a quiet but strong force in conservative groups. He was moving while other people were making noise. Still, he never got too much attention during any of it. Never tried to get attention. Never felt like I had to prove anything. The most powerful people aren't the ones who make the most noise. They're the ones who run things without anyone noticing. Most guys in his shoes would show off their money and make sure everyone knew who they were. Not Nicholas Rio. Rio was moving things behind the scenes while other real estate moguls talked about the hustle at TED and posed with their private jets. He didn't care about power. He was interested in what happened. That made him even more interesting in some way. Let's look at one of his homes. It wasn't just another it turned into a center for conservative women, holding important women for Trump events. Although Rio did write checks from his office, he wasn't just a wealthy supporter. He planned things out and made sure that his success meant something. And unlike the billionaires, who couldn't help but talk about their political ties, Rio kept it low-key but strong. In a different way. No interviews, magazine covers, or carefully chosen Instagram posts. The man wasn't very well known online. I almost thought it was cool. And for a while, he stayed out of the press until he married Caroline Leavitt. He wasn't ready for the attention, of course. People on social media loved how different their ages were. The comments were mean. A lot of people thought about it, didn't like it, and argued it had to be commercial. But they missed the point. Their marriage wasn't based on looks. They respected each other, had the same beliefs, and knew that in their world, security at home was important. So while Caroline worked in one of the busiest government jobs, Rio made sure that their home life was just that: home. He didn't think twice when their son Nicholas. He took a step back from his kingdom because he chose to, not because he had to. Changing his goals wasn't a big deal for a man who had built everything from scratch. It's what you do when you're all in. Rio tried hard to stay out of trouble, but the truth always found its way to him. Even people who work in politics for a living were shocked when Caroline finally told. People asked the same thing for weeks. How does she do it? How was she able to handle a demanding job, a new baby, and the constant stress of public life without breaking down? Some people thought it was great that she went back to work only 4 days after giving birth, while others didn't understand how she was doing it. Then it all broke one day. Caroline suddenly lost her cool in front of a room full of reporters. She was calm and professional, just like the press secretary should be. In a move that no one saw coming, she took a deep breath, steadied herself, and then took off the mask. Many people have asked her how she's been able to handle being a new mom and all the other things that come with it. Her voice was unusually raw as she spoke. I really couldn't have done any of this without my husband. And all of a sudden, the man who had been hidden for years became impossible to ignore. Even though a lot of people had ideas about their friendship, no one really knew what happened. Nicholas Rio was more than just a great businessman or a quiet He also made sure that their family wouldn't fall apart because of her job. At that time, Caroline made it clear how much he had given up before their son was even born. Rio had made a decision, but it wasn't in the news, and political experts weren't telling people to make it. What had to be done was done. He took a step back, changed his whole routine, and made sure that their family didn't miss a beat when Caroline went back to work. When I told Nicholas I wanted to return to work as soon as possible, he didn't hesitate, she said. He told her, "We'll figure it out," and he did. She talked about how she felt guilty and heartbroken leaving her son every day, and how it got too much at times. Rio was all, not just to reassure them or give them a general, "You got this" pep talk, but to actually do something. "This is possible for me because I know Nicholas is with his father and that he will be there every step of the way." And with that, the story changed. Nicholas Rio wasn't just a rich businessman or the husband who was hard to find. He was the key to making the plan work. Even though he had built a kingdom, the most important thing about him, the thing that made him stand out, was that he gave every day without expecting anything in return. Everything changed after the press meeting. There were tears in Leavitt's eyes as she talked about how much her husband had given up for their family. The normal political script was thrown out the window at that moment. It wasn't about competition or one person's job taking over the others. It was about working together. We had to really look out for each other. Of course, the reporters had a great time. Was she making it hard for moms to work, or was she showing that powerful women don't have to choose between work and family? They showed that real success is about who stands with you in a world where power often comes with a price. Maybe, just maybe, their story will make other people rethink what a real relationship looks like.